All right, good afternoon. Thanks for joining me today. This is our monthly webinar on Nebula. So this is sort of an introduction to Nebula, which is our cloud management solution. And we'll go through it today here, just giving you sort of a light overview of some of the key features and takeaways on Nebula. If you have questions as we go through, please use the question and answer interface in Zoom. And I can see those questions, and depending on what the question is, I'll either answer it as we go through, or I will save it to the end. I expect today's webinar to take around 30 minutes. So just to get started here, what is Nebula? So Nebula is the first full stack cloud networking solution for SMB. So when we got started back in 2016, or more importantly, when we got started back in 2014, when we first started designing this and speccing it out, there were several cloud management solutions on the market, but they were all aimed primarily at the enterprise space. The big players back in those days were Arrowhive, which was focused on wireless. There were a couple other guys out there that were focused entirely on wireless. And then there was Meraki, which was focused as being a proper full stack solution, allowing you to manage access points, switches, and other devices on your network. But it was really aimed at the enterprise space, and it remains that way till today. So we're the first ones that decided to take that sort of cloud interface and bring it over to the SMB space. So we launched it back in 2016, and we've been constantly improving it and updating it as we've gone on since. So Nebula itself gives you a unified and centralized place where you can manage your Zyxel equipment. We support Zyxel's access points, switches, security appliances, 4G LTE router, etc. There's no software or hardware controller needed in order to be able to use this. The Nebula client is built into the Zyxel hardware, and then we host the solution in our cloud. So these devices can automatically reach out and talk to the cloud. Nothing special you need to do. And unlike some of the other solutions out there, there is no licensing required. We do offer some licensing options which unlock additional features, but the core functionality of Nebula is made available for everyone for free. There's no limitation on the number of devices you can manage in the free version of Nebula, no limitation to the number of customers you can manage in the full version of Nebula. So as you see here, all the different types of hardware that we can manage in the Nebula cloud. And then this right here is the core of it here, the Nebula Control Center. So that's going to be the cloud-based portion of it. And that's where you're going to do all of your configuration and all of your management of Nebula compatible devices. You simply go into nebula.zyxel.com, log in, and everything is there for you. We have both a desktop optimized version of the interface and also a tablet optimized version of the interface. And then we do also make available a mobile app. Now, the mobile app is not designed primarily for management. It's there to help you just keep an eye on what's going on. And it's there for your installers so they can go ahead and scan those QR codes to be able to add the devices to the Nebula cloud. They can take photos of where they've installed the hardware just to make it easier to find the hardware if for some reason you have to go on site at a future date. And they do give access to some configuration options, but just sort of the key things there for you. For most of your configuration, you're going to want to do it in a web browser. So we'll just start here by showing, this is what typically goes into your network installation at one of your new customers, right? You've got to set up all of these things here. You got to purchase your equipment. You've got to install it. You've got to figure out how you're going to monitor it, how you're going to gain remote access, et cetera, et cetera. So the idea behind Nebula is to do all that same stuff, but simplify it for you. So you spend less time and less money when it comes to setting up and managing that network for you. So we're saving you time and we're saving you cash. So as I said, Nebula itself is free, but we do offer some additional licenses here for it that are available for you. And we will talk more in depth on the licenses towards the end of today's presentation. So the free version we call Base Pack, and that's what most of our customers are using. We've got Nebula Pro Pack, which has been there since the day we launched Nebula. And that is an extra feature pack that's aimed primarily at those of you that are MSPs. It gives you access to a bunch of tools that you would want as an MSP, things like a year's worth of logs stored in the cloud, unlimited numbers of admin accounts, email or push alerts when devices go offline, We have an audit log which tracks all the configuration changes that have been made and when they were made. Again, just to help you with troubleshooting things. And we'll talk a little bit more about those features. A year or two ago, we launched the Nebula Plus pack. It's sort of in between the free version and the pro version, and it's designed to compete with those newer solutions to the space that are targeting SMB, things like Netgear's cloud and things like that. And then we also offer what's called an MSP pack, which is independent of these bottom packs here. And this is a license that unlocks additional features for particular admin accounts. So any admin account that has this license added to it unlocks some additional features for them. And again, we'll talk a little bit about that later. So Nebula itself, really simple and easy to use. You can start configuring your devices before you've even figured out exactly what you're going to buy. A lot of those configuration options, such as your SSIDs, security settings, and stuff like that, those can be configured at any time. And then specific stuff like individual port settings on your switches and things like that will require that you add the switches into the Nebula interface. But you can start setting that up today, even before you've rolled this out. Once you do get the hardware in hand, you simply use the mobile app to scan the QR code that's on the belly label of the device or on the outside of the box, assign it to your customer, assign it to the site. And then all you need to do is get that device on site, plug it in, and as long as it has power and an internet connection, it will see that it's being managed in the Nebula cloud. It will put itself into cloud management mode, and it'll automatically download firmware updates and the configuration that it needs for that location. And then from that point on, you can manage Nebula anywhere you've got access to a web browser. So Nebula is designed to make it easy for you to get up and running in just a few minutes. So we do have some basic wizards that'll walk you through some very basic settings that'll get things up and running for you. So it just helps simplify things, makes things easier for you to get going. Again, as I mentioned before, you can do pre-configuration before you've even before you've bought the hardware. Once you do have the hardware, you can configure it without needing to actually take it out of the box. You simply scan that QR code and start configuration. And just to make this clear here, when it comes to the scan and configure, this applies to the switches and our access points. A couple exceptions to the rule: the GS 1350 series of switches do require you manually put them into Nebula mode. And then our security appliances generally require a couple extra steps just to verify you are indeed the owner of those security boxes, since those are going to be your main protection between your customers and the internet. But everything else, you just simply scan and configure. So this is the Nebula interface here. Very simple, easy to use. It's going to give you, like I said, a centralized place to go, whether you're configuring your switches, your security appliances, or your access points. Zero touch provisioning. For Nebula equipment, there is nothing you need to directly configure on the device in most cases. Again, as long as you've got power and DHCP, that's all you need to do. There's nothing, you don't have to go in there and point it at the cloud, put it into switch mode, etc. And it's designed from the ground up to allow you to manage multiple customers and multiple sites. So just to talk about some of the basics here for you, you can mix and match Zyxel Nebula equipment with non-Nebula equipment. That's a question we get a lot of the time. So basically, Nebula allows you to manage Zyxel Nebula managed compatible devices, but you don't have to replace everything on the network. It just means if it's not a Nebula compatible device on that network, that you just have to configure it like you would anything else. But there's no requirement that everything on your network be Nebula. We have lots of customers out there simply using Nebula to manage access points or to manage security gateways. And again, the agent is built into the hardware itself, so there's no cloud keys, there's no virtual machines that need to be set up, there's nothing like that. Simply plug in the Zyxel hardware, turn it on, and you're good to go. So here's what the main interface looks like when you pull up one of your customer sites. We take you to this dashboard here, which gives you a snapshot about what's going on your customer's network there. And which of these little widgets you have here on your dashboard is customizable. So you can choose to have the widgets on there that you want to see. So you can see in our example here, we're showing you what's currently online on that site. So you can see here they've got one firewall, it's online, CPU utilization's at 93%. Shows you they've got 12 switches, 11 of which are currently online. So there's a 12th switch that's either gone offline or never been set up. You can see the number of access points, number of clients, both wired and wireless. You can look here at your APs and see how many clients are there, which clients are using the most bandwidth. You can see things here like on your security gateway. Not only can you see which users are using your bandwidth, you can see which individual applications are using the bandwidth on the network. Up here at the top are two drop-down menus. One of them is a list of your customers. So you simply pull down that drop-down, choose your customer. The other drop-down then shows you all of the sites underneath that customer. Choose your site, and then you'll jump over to that site. So it makes it really easy and quick to jump between customers or jump between sites when you're looking at things. And then all your monitoring and configuration is done using these icons here on the left-hand side of the page. So this is just showing here on the AP side of things here. You've got the ability to quickly and easily set up all your different SSIDs and their basic settings right here from one interface. We've got a smart guest wireless LAN setting that you can toggle on for a guest network that'll automatically turn on layer 2 isolation and set up a captive portal for them. And you can use things like tagging to be able to decide which APs get access to which SSIDs. Here's our switch side of things here. So you can see here, it makes it really easy. You can go in, you can choose multiple ports, start configuring those. So you can configure multiple ports on multiple switches at the same time. We have the ability to set up PoE scheduling. So you can have devices automatically power down and shut off in hours when no one's there. We do support IGMP snooping, and then with the Nebula Pro Pack, you get access to advanced IGMP settings. So for those of you deploying IPTV, that might be one reason to upgrade over to the Pro license. Then you've got access here to things like vendor-based VLANs. So instead of having to do it as a port-based VLAN or having to know the MAC addresses of all of your devices, you can set up rules based just on the first few digits of the MAC address, which are going to be the same between vendors. So if you've got a certain vendor of VoIP phone that you know need to be on the VoIP SSID, instead of having to configure all of those individually, you just put in those first few digits of the MAC address. And anytime we see one of those devices plugged into one of our switches, they'll automatically get put on the VLAN that you define there. And this is just showing here if you have our Plus or Pro Pack or the MSP license, we do have the ability to set up push or email alerts for you, letting you know when certain types of devices go offline for a certain period of time. As you can see here, you can go in and define, how long does that device need to be offline before you get sent an alert. With the Pro version of Nebula here, as I was mentioning earlier, we have an audit log. So we track every configuration change and when it was made, and we store that in the cloud for a year for you. So if you're troubleshooting some problems, you can go through and see, was anything recently changed? Was anything, or has this change been sitting there for months without issues? So you can help try to figure out what's causing the issues that you're seeing. We have what we call misconfiguration protection, something you've probably run into if you've been doing this for a while and messing with VLANs, where you accidentally apply your VLANs in the wrong order and suddenly lose the ability to manage a certain device and need to send someone on site to factory reset it so you can get it going. So we have the ability to protect that. So we'll protect against VLAN misconfiguration or IP address misconfiguration to make sure if you are making those changes, they are applied in the right order so you do not lose connectivity to any of the other existing devices on your network. And we give you the ability to schedule your firmware updates. Free version of Nebula lets you go in and set up, a certain time, the time and date that you want to do firmware updates. If you have the Pro Pack on Nebula, it gives you the ability to set up individual rules for individual devices. So you can have schedules for different individual devices or different classes of devices. So some other things we have here, the free version of Nebula allows you to put your customer sites on a Google map so you can get an idea of where they are. When you have the Plus or the Pro version of Nebula, You also get access to automatic topology view, where we'll automatically map out for you which devices are connected to which other devices. Again, it's a handy tool to sort of figure out and help you when you're troubleshooting things. Okay, this access point's not getting power. What switch is it plugged into? Go into topology view. You can quickly see, okay, this device is connected to this switch. So we can go check that switch's settings to see why it's not getting the PoE power, something along those lines. And we give you access to a number of different live tools to help you do some troubleshooting on the network, showing you the current level of bandwidth that's being utilization, being able to do pings and trace routes from the individual Zyxel network devices out onto the network. We also give you the ability here with the Plus or Pro version of Nebula to generate reports that are automatically generated for you. So you can go in, set up a view that you like, and have it automatically email that to you on a schedule that you set. Now, if you're sending these to your customers, you also have the ability to add your own branding to those emails, so that when they get those emails, they know it's coming from you as well as us. And some other stuff we have here. If you're upgrading to the Pro Pack, you get access to synchronization, the ability to synchronize settings between different sites. So if you have a customer, they've got multiple sites, instead of having to go in and configure each site individually when something changes, you can simply go in and then synchronize the changes from one site to all the other sites under that same customer. We have the ability to clone switch settings between different switches, the ability to back up and restore switch settings, and the ability to set up a configuration template that will automatically make some configuration changes across that customer for you. So Zyxel has this MSP portal. So this is something that requires that MSP license. So this MSP license, you assign it to an admin account, and then it unlocks these features for that admin. So one of the first things it does is it unlocks what we call the MSP portal. So the MSP portal gives you a single view here, showing you all of the, let's see, oh, I guess I'm missing the screenshot I thought I had in there. My bad. It's going to show you a list of all of your customers and give you a quick snapshot of what's going on in their networks. It's just a way to easily keep on top of your customers, see which ones are using the free version of Nebula, which ones are using a pro version of Nebula. If they are using licenses, do they have any licenses that are set to expire or have recently expired? Are they having any connectivity issues at any of their sites? Things like that. And then you can go in, choose one of your customers, and you'll get this sort of top-down view of what's going on, how many devices they have, whether they're licensed or not, et cetera. And then you can drill down to each individual site to see what's been going on in each of those. So another thing we can do here, again, using that MSP Pro Pack, is we have the ability to have you add your branding to the Nebula interface. So if you're letting your customers, either their IT guy, go in and make some of their own configuration changes, or you're just giving them read-only access so they can go in and just see what's going on their network on themselves, you can add your own branding to those pages, and you can also replace the Zyxel contact information with your contact information. And then we make it easier for you to manage teams. So if you're a larger MSP, you've got a lot of different admins that need access to different sites, et cetera. So instead of having to go into each of your customers and manually set up which of your employees have access to them and what level of access, you can create teams and then simply assign those teams to different customers or different sites and control access that way. So it's a lot less hassle if you're having to manage a lot of different admins that you have working for you. So we'll talk here a little bit about the licenses. So we're going back to the base pack, the plus pack, and the pro pack. So those are our three main areas of licensing. Now, in order to use these licenses, these are done at the org level. So org is what we call your customers. So when you're using Nebula, you're going to set up each of your customers as their own individual organization, and then you can set up individual sites under that. In order to use the plus or pro pack, every Nebula device needs to have a valid plus or pro pack in that organization. So You don't want to put all of your customers under one org. You want to give each of your customers their own individual organization. So that way, if you decide you need to upgrade to Plus or Pro Pack, you're only upgrading their devices. You don't have to upgrade every single one of your customers at the same time. If you have a customer where maybe some sites need the Plus or Pro Pack and some sites don't, then you would split that customer up into two different organizations. So again, in order to be able to use a Plus or Pro Pack, every device in that organization needs to have a valid license. If at any point one of those licenses expire, you're given a 15-day grace window to renew that license. And if you choose not to, then the organization drops back to the free version. So that's something that makes us different than most of our competitors in this space. With most competitors, you have to have paid licensing to manage your devices. And if for any reason the licensing expires, you lose the ability to configure your devices. So with Zyxel's Nebula, it simply drops back to the free version, which gives you access to the majority of the configuration settings that those devices have. So now we'll talk about some of the differences between these three levels. So all of them give you access to Nebula, including that zero-touch deployment. The fact you don't have to configure the Nebula devices, they will automatically put themselves into cloud mode if they see you've assigned them to a customer in the cloud. All versions give you access to firmware management and scheduling. All of them give you access to our mobile app. So one of the areas here where we're going to see some differences now is going to be when it comes to logging. The free version of Nebula only stores 24 hours of logs in the cloud. So if you need more than 24 hours, you'll need to either upgrade to one of the different versions of Nebula here, or if you want to use the free version, we do support standard syslog. So you can have it export your logs to syslog and you can store them yourself. The Plus version of Nebula upgrades you to 7 days worth of logs stored in the cloud. And then the Pro Pack, we store a full year's worth of log information in the cloud for you. Another area where there's some differences here comes to the number of admins that can be assigned to a customer of yours in Nebula. So with the free version of Nebula, an individual customer or organization is limited to 5 admin accounts. Plus Pack gets you access to 8 different admin accounts per organization. And then Pro Pack, there is no limit on the number of admin accounts you can have for each individual organization. Another area here where there's some differences comes to our cloud database. So we have a cloud authentication database that you can use for things like MAC filtering, 8021X authentication, stuff like that. So most of our features also do support your own syslog server. So if you need more than what the base pack gives you, you can use your own syslog server for most of these features to do your authentication yourself. But if you want to use our cloud-hosted authentication server, the free version of Nebula limits you to 50 entries in that database. The Plus version of Nebula limits you to 100 entries, and then Pro Pack gives you an unlimited number of entries. And again, this is per organization, so per customer that you have. And then going back here, some of the things that everybody has, no matter which version of licensing you have, you get access to the ability to do scheduling for SSIDs to go off and on, PoE, firewall rules, things like that. All versions give you access to MAC and 8021X authentication. All versions give you access to Captive Portal. And then going on here, here's where we start seeing some of the differences. So going on here, this requires either the Plus or the Pro Pack. So advanced firmware scheduling. So firmware scheduling is available in the free version, but advanced firmware scheduling requires the Plus or Pro Pack. And again, that lets you go in and set schedules based on the type of device or based on individual devices. You can have a million different schedules depending on which individual device it is that you want. The ability to get push alerts or email alerts or reports, that requires the Plus or the Pro Pack. That automatic topology view I showed you, that requires the Plus or the Pro Pack. Wi-Fi vouchers, which probably most of you aren't using, that requires Plus or Pro Pack. So Wi-Fi vouchers has to do with using Nebula to automatically generate credentials for a user to log into a guest network. It's primarily being used for those that are selling access to a public hotspot, such as a hotel or things like that. The ability to have those audit logs or change logs, that requires Pro Pack. The ability to synchronize configuration between sites on an organization, that requires ProPack. Um, the ability to back up and restore your switch configurations, that requires ProPack. The ability to get access to remote CLI. So you log into Nebula and then you use the Nebula interface to send CLI commands to compatible devices. That requires the ProPack. The ability to open up a ticket and send it directly to Zyxel's support in Taiwan. That requires the ProPack. Continuing on here, again, you need the ProPack if you're going to be using our API to provide integration with third-party services. Give me just a second here. I apologize. Sorry for the interruption there. We have a senior dog and she's got dementia and she's having she's very angry at the wall right now. Sorry, let me go ahead and continue today's presentation. She's okay otherwise. So it gives you access to advanced AAA features on the captive portal, particularly those of you that are using a radius surf to provide additional services. So that requires the ProPack. We have an advanced Wi-Fi management, which uses artificial intelligence or machine learning to manage your Wi-Fi connections. That requires ProPack. We've got advanced static routing and advanced IGMP snooping. When it comes to our switch settings, that requires the ProPack. If you're using our special security switches, access to some of those advanced security features on those switches, that requires ProPack. And then some of your advanced VPN settings require ProPack, although you don't need ProPack for VPN, just for some of these advanced things, such as the ability to create scripts that your end users can run to automatically configure their VPN settings. Continuing on with licensing, again, as I mentioned earlier, we have that MSP pack. So again, instead of where the Pro and the Plus packs were per organization and per device, where every device in an org had to have it, the MSP licensing is based on the admin account. So any admin account that has access to the MSP license has access to all of these features on every site that they have admin access to. So again, it gives you access to that MSP portal and those other features I talked about earlier. One of the nice things it does for you is it allows you to get email alerts from all of your customers, even those that are using the free version of Nebula. So if the only feature you really care about when it comes to the Plus or Pro pack is those email and push alerts, instead of having to upgrade all of your customers to Plus, you can simply buy an MSP pack license for your main admin account. And then all of those sites that it has access to will also have access to those email alerts for you. So if you've been listening to my presentation, you say, hey, I want to get into Nebula. How do I know what devices work with Nebula? What you want to look for is the term Nebula Flex on our data sheets. So when we originally did Nebula, we copied the Cisco Meraki way of doing things where there was two line of products. One line of products, which is your traditionally managed products, and one line of products that's designed for the cloud. But we've gotten away from that now, and we've introduced this Nebula Flex. So what Nebula Flex allows you to do is it allows us to have one line of products that can be managed in the cloud, should you want to. It can be managed locally, should you want to. So, that way you can standardize on one set of hardware, regardless of whether or not you're going to be using the cloud to manage those customers of yours. And the way it works basically is you simply, like I said, you go into Nebula, you add the device into the Nebula cloud and assign it to the customer. Our device will automatically recognize that that it's been put into cloud mode. It'll check with the cloud periodically. It'll say, hey, okay, I've been added to the cloud. It will automatically reboot itself into cloud mode and allow you to then manage it through the cloud. If at any point you decide, hey, I don't want to use this in the cloud anymore, I just want it to be standalone again. Maybe I'm moving it from one customer to another customer or from a customer site back to your lab. You simply remove it from the Nebula cloud, and the device will automatically put itself back into standalone mode. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that the configuration in the Nebula cloud and configuration in standalone are completely independent from each other. So when you switch modes, you will need to then reconfigure the device. The configuration doesn't port back and forth between those two modes. You will also see some of our products labeled Nebula Flex Pro. And for the most part, all that means is when you buy that device, it comes bundled with a 1-year Nebula Pro pack. So if you're looking to buy and deploy Nebula Pro at one of your customer sites, it may make sense to just simply buy the Nebula Flex Pro version of those devices because they will come with that 1-year license for you automatically out of the box. You don't have to then add the licenses. The one exception to this is the access points, and the exception isn't that it takes that away, but that it adds an extra feature. So our access points can also be managed with a local controller, the traditional way you would do larger deployments. So if you want an access point that can be managed with a local controller, you need to buy a Nebula Flex Pro device. So those APs can operate in 3 modes: standalone, local controller, or cloud managed. So as I was mentioning, it's really simple to switch back and forth between the 2 modes at any point. And here's just a quick breakdown of some of the different devices we have. So this top half here is going to be our Nebula Flex devices. The bottom half here is mostly is going to be our Nebula Flex Pro devices. So as you can see, we've got a bunch of our lower end APs or Nebula Flex. On the switch side of things, the 1950, the 1920, and the 1930 series are all Nebula Flex. And our brand new low-cost security router, the SCR50AXE, is Nebula Flex. For Nebula Flex Pro, it's our higher end APs, the 500 series and higher APs. Those are Nebula Flex Pro. On the switches, it's the 1350 series. Those are those security switches. The GS2220 series and the 3800 series. Those are all Nebula Flex Pro. And then when it comes to our security appliances, the USG Flex and the ATP series, the USG Flex series, if you're buying the version of the USG Flex that comes bundled with UTM services, that will include a 1-year Pro pack. If you're buying the standalone version that doesn't come bundled with UTM licenses, it'll simply be Nebula Flex. And then the ATP series, those only are sold with the bundled licenses. So those ones are always going to include 1 year of Nebula Pro pack out of the box. And then our LTE 4G router, that is also Nebula Flex Pro. So we get a lot of questions asking, how does Nebula work? What about privacy? What about security? So we are a multinational corporation. Most of our business for our company is done outside the US. So we comply with just about every sort of security and privacy standard that's out there across the world. We support GDRP, which is the big privacy one for Europe. So you don't have to worry about privacy issues. You don't have to worry about HIPAA issues, things like that. So basically the way it works is the only communication between a Nebula device and the Nebula cloud is configuration based. None of the user's traffic is being sent to our cloud. None of the user's private data is being sent to our cloud. That proceeds to stay on the local network or go out to the public LAN, just as it would as if you were not doing cloud managed. So our Nebula cloud services are hosted in Amazon AWS. So that's one of the biggest guys out there as far as cloud goes. So we have very low risk of downtime. We have a 99.99% uptime SLA, but you don't have to worry that we're trying to host it ourselves in our own data center somewhere. We are relying on AWS to host these for us. And because of that, everything is scalable. There's 100% scalability. You can start off today with just a couple of devices, and in no time, you can upgrade to tens of thousands of devices, all managed in the Nebula cloud for you. So you can scale as needed when you need it. There's no additional cost for adding those additional devices on there for you. Everything is handled by us security-wise goes between us and AWS. And instead of creating our own proprietary protocol to allow those devices to talk to the cloud, we use industry standard netconf protocol to handle that, to make sure everything is secure and there's no risks of data leaking out or hacking being done. So just to sort of summarize here, what are the benefits when it comes to Nebula? Simple and easy to use. We've got a nice, easy to use interface. It's scaled down. It's very easy to add devices to the cloud or take them out of the cloud. There's nothing that you need to do to configure locally for you. It makes it quicker to deploy your networks, gives you a lot more flexibility in how you do it and when you do those configurations. You don't have to spend a lot of time on site setting IP addresses and pointing devices to the cloud, things like that. Makes it super easy for you to keep an eye on your customers and support them when they have issues, because at any point, one of your admins can simply log into nebula.zyxel.com. All of your customers are there, so they have easy, quick access to what's going on, the ability to push out those configuration changes without needing to go on site. And with that, guys, that ends today's webinar here. As far as just giving you sort of a rough idea of what Nebula is and how it works. Just to point you in a couple directions here for you. All of our webinars are recorded, or most of our webinars are recorded, and we automatically upload those to our YouTube page. So the US channel here is called Zyxel America channel. That's what our name is on YouTube. So if there was a webinar you wanted to go to and you couldn't, or was one you went to and you thought someone else at your company should see it, it'll show up within about 24 hours on our YouTube page. And then of course you can connect to us here at Zyxel US channel. And with that, if there's any questions, go ahead and send them in. I have none waiting for me, so I'll wait around here for just a few seconds in case any of you have any additional questions for me.